Hello and welcome to Console Shock, episode 45, Retro Modern Gaming Chat with me, Trev.
And Stu, me.
You didn't know what to say there for a sec.
No, yeah, and me, everyone knows me.
Yeah. How's it going, Stu?
Yeah, good. We've got a subject we're going to talk about today, but before that subject...
Red Dead.
Yeah, you knew where I was going, and I didn't even say that before in our chat, but Red Dead, I'm about 30% into the game. I'm absolutely loving it.
Yeah, I'm not as far as that. I've got a few other things I'm still playing, so I kind of put it around that. But yeah, I'm about 15%-ish, I think.
Yeah.
Got past that and that sort of blizzard. I would not ruin it for anybody, but that sort of bit where you're in like a blizzard.
Yeah.
And just knocking around that little camp thing that you set up, and it's just doing the little odds and ends on that. And weirdly enough, it kind of got me thinking, I never played Undead Nightmare, and I've had it sat on my shelf for ages. So I actually played a bit of that as well. And I even sort of dug out my Grand Theft Auto 5, so I kind of got a bit of a weird craving for open world Rockstar games. But it is really good, obviously playing it on the old Xbox One X. And
I mean, it looks amazing. I've seen a lot of the Digital Foundry videos all about all of the different versions, and you see the Xbox One X version, and I'm playing it, and every now and again you get a little speck of pop-in, where a bush or something will just change textures in the background, and you do notice it every now and again. But then they showed the PS4 and the Xbox One, or the original Xbox One versions of the games, and they were saying, all the sort of the trees almost look like mush in the background, and it's a lot more pixelated and things like that. So I'd actually be interested to play the game on the sort of the base Xbox One, but I haven't actually got one, so can't really do that. But sort of really see the difference. But it does look amazing on the One X.
Yeah, I wish they would give you more options for the graphics though, because presumably someone that bought an X is a bit more interested in, optimizing their kind of experience, or whatever you want to call it. So I think they should let people like that have some games do have this, but it should let you maybe have a mode where it's for the best sort of quality, in terms of the visual fidelity, but it locks it to 30 frames a second to be able to give you that. Or you can bung the resolution down, or just the graphic details, but have it run at 60.
Yeah, that's what a lot of games do. They call it sort of graphics mode or performance mode. Yeah,
exactly.
And
Tomb Raider had that and did that quite well a few years ago. Yeah. Because I would probably play. To be honest, I would sacrifice some of the graphics to run it at 60, because it would just feel weird. It will just feel more responsive, and it will just look. To me, that looks nicer than better graphics at a lower, more detail, not better graphics, because a higher frame rate could be thought of as better graphics. But yeah, I wish they would do that, and then you could just kind of flick between them and decide what you want. Because surely the people that bought an Xbox One X are people that are into optimizing their game and all that stuff. You know, if you weren't into that, you wouldn't bother spending the extra money. Unless, you know, also there's plenty of people that just want it to be 4K and they'll happily take the hit on the frame rate, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested to see what it looks like, the Xbox One X on a 1080p TV, you know, would that be, would there be any sort of bump in frame rates or...
I think they tested that, actually. If you look on Digital Foundry, they did go through running... I'm not sure, actually, it might be the PS4 Pro version that allows that. If you run it on a 1080p screen, it will actually eliminate any kind of frame rate drops at all, because it will run it in 1080p, not super sampled. So it's not 4K squished down onto 1080p. It will just run it in 1080p at like the native pixel resolution of the TV. But because of that, obviously that's allowing it a lot more. It's got a lot more room to breathe with that. And it locks it to 30 frames a second. So, you know, although to be fair, on the Xbox One X at 4K, it doesn't drop really much at all. It runs better than Red Dead did on the Xbox 360, which was okay, good at playable and everything, but that would have, you know, hitching and drop down to 24.
Well, they detailed, there was another video that was on one of the channels, and they said, oh, you know, what did Red Dead look like on sort of the original Xbox compared to the sort of the towns, because a lot of the map is actually on the original one is now on the new. Right. They're in the same area basically. Yeah. And so they were saying, oh, when you go into this pub or this bar or this town, it obviously they've made it look better, just there's a lot more going on and things like that. But things like the pianos are still in the same place. But they slowed it down and they showed that things in the background, like other stagecoaches and stuff, they were moving at something like 1 frame a second.
Yeah, exactly.
So you didn't notice it when you were running along on a horse. No, but when it slowed down and it's pointed out to you, you're actually, oh god, man, there's a little trick there. Oh, there's a little trick there.
When you're running on an Xbox One X, so it upscales it to 4K, you'll notice those little in the distance details that are naturally, you know, pared back because you know they're normally not seen. But yeah, that actually accentuates all of that stuff. And the Red Dead 1 looks great on a 4K on an Xbox One X. You know, upscaled to 4K, it doesn't look that outdated. You notice it more in like things like trees and shrubbery and things like that, because they just look like a you know, they look sort of cookie cutter sort of look to them, but it still looks good.
I think that the issue I have with the original Red Dead was it did look a little bit like it was either grassy and desert-like with a few rocks. And then there wasn't much variety in the actual landscape. Some bit areas had a few more trees, and maybe, you know, I never completed the game, I have to admit, but so there could have been another part of it, but it was always just sort of rocky.
No, there wasn't really. There wasn't. There's no big city or anything that. You know, yeah. But the draw, I mean, that's why, you know, you could get like really amazing looking draw distance, couldn't you? And big mountains in the background. You can even see the bushes and shrubs on the mountain, because there wasn't a lot else to draw, really, was there? When you were just out in a sort of an open world wasteland kind of area. But it does make you think, like, what is Grand Theft Auto 6 going to look like? You know,
well, that's it, and I can't. Rockstar Games, they've got to be the best developer of games, bar none in the world. There's such big events, and you know, there's such good games, and they do the story. And I have the problem with, I don't know, a lot of people might have this, where you play a game, you know, you complete it over the course of a week or 10 days or something. And at the end of it, you don't really know quite. I don't know. You're sort of trying to follow the story, but you're not really sure really quite what was going on. And something else happens, and something else, and then there's something from when you were playing it a week or two ago that they refer back to, and you're all like, oh well, lots of things happened, and I saved the day, and it was all a fun experience, I saved the planet or whatever. But with Grand Theft Auto, the way they managed to do the storytelling, I think that's absolutely unbelievable. And
It was like, I mean, it's like a really good heist film, you know. That's basically what it is, but good. It is really, you know, it could be a good film anyway. You don't have to like run a game.
because I was so disappointed with the thing that really disappointed me about Grand Theft Auto 5. Now, people might, have a go at me for this. It didn't have any DLC. Now, I know it had its online thing, but if it had it had a £20 DLC pack, which was another 15 hours of storyline, I would have bought that. I would have bought that 10 times.
Yeah, like 4, with its 2 little single player, extra thingies. Yeah.
Yeah, and to me, it was like, what was it? Probably about 6 months ago, I was so looking forward to, a Rockstar Grand Theft Auto product that I went back and I played Ballad of Gay Tony. And for a DLC, that's how DLC should be done. It was a good 15 hours. It had a great story. It could have been Grand Theft Auto 6 and got, or Grand Theft Auto 4.5, Grand Theft Auto 5, or its own game, basically. In my opinion, it was that good, and that's how, in my opinion, DLC should be done.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest, that's probably how it's going to be. I'll be very surprised if they make in a few months' time they'll announce another single player smaller little campaign, add-on campaign for Red Dead Redemption 2, and they probably won't do it for Grand Theft Auto 6 if they ever get around to making it. I assume they're making it. I hope they're making it.
I'm sure they're going to make Grand Theft Auto 6 because Grand Theft Auto 5 has been the most successful entertainment product in the history of the world ever.
Yeah, I mean, I'll still dip into it now. I mean, the PC version, you can run that in 4K. We're now sort of a few years removed from when the PC version came out in 2015, which is the version I played the most. And now that runs pretty easily on anything, really. A very modest PC can run that at 60 frames a second at 1080p, which looks better than what it was on the Xbox One and the PS4. I don't think that had any kind of Xbox One X patches or anything, or PS4 Pro.
I don't know. I have got the game, but I never really got into the online side of it, and
no, I had a little play around with it, but I'm not into online gaming anyway. So, I mean, if I play it, I tend to just go back in the I mean, I completed it, so now I could go back into the single player, and I could just muck around. There's no, I could do the side, missions and find all the little weird trinkets and all that stuff without, really worrying about having to do any of the missions. I've never brought myself to uninstall it, even though it's about 100 gig nearly on the PC.
I imagine
version is absolutely huge because it's obviously it got the same high quality assets as the Xbox One and the PS4 versions. So yeah, it's quite a big game. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, when 6 comes out, because obviously that will take place in the city, so I don't know if they're going to have to pare down the graphics a little bit, because that will be harder for a GPU to render than just a fairly barren looking Western sort of world, a big city with cars and tons of cars and people, and there's so many scripts running to run all that stuff, and buildings and like trains going around, and it's going to be crazy.
I think that what's going to happen is almost going to be they must be building it for the next generation of systems, but I think it will be the last game, the last big game of like the PS4, Xbox One.
Like 5 was.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to do that again. That worked for them. So everyone, I'll go buy it on the PS4, the Xbox One X, and I'll be absolutely amazed by it. But then they'll bring out, Grand Theft Auto 5 or Grand Theft Auto 6 Plus or Ultra Edition or whatever for the the PlayStation 5 and things like that.
Actually, well, I mean, will we get those remasters in the future? Because now they'll just make consoles, sort of forward compatible, the games, and it'll just be a case of just putting the same disc in the Xbox, 2, whatever they're going to call it, and it will just maybe download an extra patch for the game that you're playing, and that'll add some high resolution textures, and maybe it'll unlock the frame rate, and that'll be it. They won't need to go and do a big, huge remaster of the game. They'll just add a little download pack for it.
That's it. I think the next generation of computers or video game consoles. It's going to be. It'll almost be sort of. It's like having a Pentium 1, which is the Xbox One at the moment, and then the Xbox One 2, Xbox 12, whatever you want to call it. That'll be sort of like the Pentium 2. So you've got a new computer with more RAM, faster processor, but it'll still play games designed for the Pentium 1.
Yeah, they're the same discs, and then so you won't need. There'll also be games that will only that will only work on the new ones. But the ones from the previous gen, this one that we're currently in, probably coming near the end of, as you're saying, they'll just be, you'll be able to pop those in. And because they run on the same architecture now, it's not these big custom designed CPUs and graphics cards and all that stuff that you need to rebuild your game to be able to work on it, basically, or build some ridiculously difficult to run emulator. They're not just be Intel or AMD chips, and standard sort of graphics cards that they tend to just get from the same people, like AMD will probably make the chips and the graphics card again. And they aren't really alien, unique things that have been custom built. So these games will still be able to work on that stuff. It'll just need a minor patch, because they're basically, what I'm saying is, they're, like you say, you've actually said it with the Pentium analogy, that they're PCs really.
Exactly, and that's what they did with the One X compared to the, in fact, or certainly the PS4 Pro. To the PS4, if you put a PS4 again that's not, hasn't been supported for 2, 3, 4 years, you pop it in your PS4 Pro, it's going to perform better because one, it's got, is there more RAM in it? Yeah, I think there is.
I think there is everything. Yeah, they boosted everything.
More RAM. You got a faster processor. It's all built more efficiently and all of that, so it actually performs better.
Exactly, and. So yeah, I think that'll be how it'll work. I don't think you'll see big remasters of the current gen sort of stuff. I mean, I don't really know what they'll target the new consoles because I don't know anybody that has an 8K TV. The last gen
I think that
came at a weird time when 4K was just starting to come in. It wasn't standard, but it was starting to come in. So a lot of people were disappointed that maybe they didn't have as much horsepower. Well, they couldn't even do 1080p as the Xbox One couldn't, which is kind of a frustration.
Well, exactly, and I think the next, next console generation will be, let's get 4K, let's get every game will be 4K.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And 60 frames a second, it'll all look amazing. And because you're right, I don't want to sound like that, but I don't see anyone selling 8K TVs.
Can you really? Yeah.
No, so I think 4K is going to be here for a long while, and there's going to be a lot of pressure from the online people. They're not going to want to send out 8K signals to people, and
we can actually get them. I've just had a quick look while we were talking because I thought I need to back this up. Yeah, you can get them from. So I'm looking at PC World, Curry's, good old Curry's. Yeah,
you actual TVs or monitors.
TV. No, an actual TV, and they're around $1,000. Actually, more like $2,000.
Yeah,
for an 8K TV.
Because I'm sort of, if you've got the 8K TV, which it's great to show off to your friends and stuff, but what 8K content could you put through that?
Actually, no, I'll tell a lie. That was a 4K TV that I just saw. There's one that I'm looking at directly from Samsung. I think this is an actual 8K TV. Just let me load it up. It's taking ages. Here we go. Yeah, an 8K HDR 75-inch TV.
Yeah,
it's £7,000.
Oh well, there's
yeah,
people. You got to be blooming.
Yeah, and there's
Jay-Z
no
or something.
Yeah, as far as I know, there isn't any 8K streaming service. I don't think there's any. There isn't any like Netflix or anything like that. I think probably it'll have to be the only place you'd get that stuff. That's only, I don't know if that's the actual resolution, but it'd be like IMAX. It's probably an 8K resolution.
I mean, I would say to have 8K computer monitors for if you're doing productivity work and you're dealing a lot with pictures and stuff. I think that would have a place, but oh God, I sound like I'm from the dark ages. Old people never have 8K TVs. Who wants a TV 75 inches?
Exactly.
In reality, we'll all have them probably in 10 years' time.
Well, they would have imagined like a 50-inch TV, not that long ago, and that's kind of the standard now, isn't it? No one gets 20-inch TVs or 30 or even 40 now.
I think mine's yours is bigger than mine, but mine's a 49-inch TV.
I think basically what will happen is they'll become like things that you can roll up because they'll be impractical to be in a big, clumsy, solid frame when they're getting really, really big. And you might find that flats and houses that get built in the future, they'll probably have like just a wall that's for the TV. Because they're going to get so big, you would have an entire side of your living room that will be just made for a TV wall that you can either pull down or you roll up or something, and that'll be it.
I saw a video yesterday by Linus Tech Tips, and I quite like that guy. He does good videos, and they had some TV which cost about 15 grand. It was this extremely thin 75-inch. I think it was Samsung, might not have been TV, and they were holding it, and it almost sort of flexed. It was like a Ouija, not a Ouija board, one of those things that Rolf Harris had. Shouldn't quite Rolf Harris really, should I? Anyway, the Australian people have, and and it really had a flex, and you put it onto the wall, and it had a sort of one of those like a ribbon cable that came out at the bottom of it, and then it went into a sound bar. Yeah, and exactly. The sound bar that obviously had the speakers in, that had all the software on there to do all of the smart TV features, and that was actually the TV where the actual screen was literally just the screen. Exactly,
yeah. That'll be how it'll work in the future, and then consoles will be sort of targeting that as the and an 8K resolution on like 100-inch screen will probably look really good, but you'll need to develop a game. Like the textures will have to be like amazing looking, and it will just even more work they'll be for people.
So I find that now, I don't know if I'm right in saying this, but it seems to be maybe years ago I might be having candy coated or rose tinted glasses, but we used to every week there's another game coming out, and it was there's another really good shooter coming out, there's another really good this type of game, there's another good game coming out here. But now the actual AAA titles, or even the A titles, there seem to be a hell of a lot less of them.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I kind of feel like it's about the same. I can't really. I hadn't really thought of it in that way, to be honest.
Because we've had Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, Red Dead Redemption.
I think there's more franchises now that have kind of killed off a lot of the.
Yeah, and there's a Battlefield coming out.
I mean, you think of the PS2, there was like how many football games? I don't mean just FIFA Pro Evo.
Yeah, there was loads, yeah.
Yeah, and eventually, it just got to the point where it's, the FIFA and Pro Evolution were so popular and so good, they just killed off all the other people. They didn't bother making any. And there was a few other good ones, like This Is Football was good. I used to like that. There were some other franchises that could have carried on, and to be honest, there probably isn't any more room for really a big football game. I mean, it's a limit. It is a niche genre already. So two's probably, you don't want one really if you can help it, because then what have they got to compete against? That's happened with like Madden and stuff, isn't it? That's they're the only base that, well, there's only one basketball. There's two basketball games. There's one NHL game and one NFL game these days.
Yeah, so, but I remember there always used to be sort of action adventure games coming out a lot more than there is now.
Yeah.
Maybe, and I'm putting this down to games now are a lot. You're either, there's two types of studios where you focus on, let's do an indie game where it's all pixel graphics and things like that, really sort of pixel graphics, and it's maybe sort of 2D because it's a lot cheaper to do, and let's try and make that as good as we can. Or then there's the other side of it where they go, right, let's try and make a multi-million-pound game. Like the budgets are £50 million, and we want to sell 10 million copies of it, and get all our money back. And that's sort of what I see now. And then you get Nintendo as well that does their games, but
it's happened before. I mean, I remember watching we've mentioned this, the Amiga sort of documentary that came out. I can't remember which one. There's been a few of them, isn't there? I can't remember the name of which one it was, but they basically talk about how there was the big difference that a lot of people found when they jumped from like Commodore 64 in terms of developers and companies that made games. They jumped from Commodore 64 to like Amiga and Atari ST. Was the fact that now you needed like 20 people to make a game. Well, maybe not 20, but like 5 or 6 to make some kind of a game.
To me, it's almost gone from, you talk about the bedroom coder. Britain was great at making the bedroom coder where, one, spotty nose, 16-year-old sat there, missed school, told his mum he wanted to be a programmer, and then after 3 weeks, he made Chucky Egg.
Yeah, exactly.
And we got 20,000, or £2,000 out of it, and bought himself a car. I don't know. You hear all these stories, and then sort of the Amiga came along, where you needed, 6 people to make a game.
Sound guy,
then
to write a story.
Yeah, and then when the PlayStation 2, you needed 20 people. Then when the Xbox 360, you needed 100 people.
Yeah,
exactly. And now to make, Red Dead, I bet 1,000 people were involved.
Yeah, so now a natural byproduct of that is there's just the bigger companies that are already set up to that. For that can keep on going, and the ones that weren't will fall by the wayside. And I mean, you've only got to look at, and like I said, it's happened before. Like we talked about it just amongst ourselves, in the week that Kim Justice released a really good Sensible Software.
That was a cracking. I'd recommend everyone watch it. It's over 2 hours long, but it's crazy, I mean, I downloaded it on my phone. I was watching that sort of 20 minutes, on the way to work, and then 20 minutes back, and it really did cover sort of Sensible Software in great depth and very good.
But they were a good example, weren't they? Because they were completely unprepared for the PlayStation, really. They kind of rested on their laurels with the Amiga and the 16-bit era a bit too much, and they didn't really get any expertise in to start developing 3D games, which is a whole new skill set you needed to be able to do that, and they didn't really have it already internally. Whereas perhaps your EAs and people like that, they had, because they were so much bigger as a studio, they could just hire that stuff, and maybe a lot of that stuff was there already because they maybe were a bit more experimental with. Well, they did flight sims, didn't they, on the Amiga and stuff? So they probably had people that were into 3D already that were just naturally evolved, so they were able to survive, and that's kind of what happened.
That's it. It sort of brings up sort of an interesting point, and how at that time we're going to 3D, and I'm actually going to go into something else now quickly, but it felt like Mario 3, or Super Mario 64, sorry, that was an absolutely sort of amazing game that did 3D really, really well. And then on the PlayStation, you got Crash Bandicoot, you got Spyro, you got Banjo-Kazooie back on the N64. So there's so many good 3D games that we all remember. But then I'm going to bring up the PlayStation Classic Mini Console, and that's got plenty of or a few 3D games on there, and the one that comes to mind is Jumping Flash. Now, to me, that is such a poor quality game.
Weird set of games you get with it, isn't it? I have to say.
Yeah, it's. I looked through there. Why they got Tekken 3, which is
ones they announced were good, and then the new ones they've added in are kind of shit.
Well, saying that though, I'll go through the list actually. Battle Arena to Shinden. Shit. Yeah. Cool Borders 2. I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Destruction Derby 1.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah. Final Fantasy
7. A lot better,
Seven.
yeah. Final Fantasy 7, yeah. Standard, good, yeah.
Yeah. The original Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, I think for historical purposes, like on its own, I think it's probably worth it, yeah.
Yeah. Intelligent Cube.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you anything about it. Don't know anything about it.
I think that's one of those Eurose games that's made and it ended up becoming a commercial game, like Devil Dice. I could be wrong, but it's like a sort of a puzzle game. It's certainly not something you would. It's not the first game you'd think of when you could have thought. It's not even the 20th game. I think if you thought of the PlayStation. So yeah, it probably shouldn't be in there. Basically, is what they're saying.
Yeah, and then we got Jumping Flash, which to me, it looks awful. It's just going around quite a small map.
It was okay when it came out. It was okay, but it wasn't the system seller at all.
You wouldn't see that. It wasn't Sony's answer to Mario 64.
No.
Then we got Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not my type of game, but everyone seems to love it.
I love it. Yeah, that's a great game.
Mr. Driller.
No.
Again,
I mean, I'm not dismissing these because they're shit. There's just better things they could add instead of this, I think.
Exactly.
So yeah, no for Mr. Driller.
Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey.
No.
Rayman.
Yeah. Because I mentioned on the podcast, I don't know if it was the last one or a few ago, that Rayman's the biggest selling PS1 game in the UK.
Is it really?
I said that, and you were like, "No way!" And it's like, "Yeah, it's the biggest selling PlayStation 1 game ever." Rayman. So on that alone, yeah, it's a good game.
Are you sure? Where did you get that from?
I think Eurogamer. I read that.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
Resident Evil Director's Cut.
Yeah, I agree with that one. Yeah.
That's good. The original Persona game, Revelations Persona.
No.
Not my cup of tea.
No.
Ridge Racer Type 4.
Definitely, yes. Definitely.
Yeah. Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo.
Put a proper Street Fighter game on it. Put Street Fighter Alpha 2. That was good on the PlayStation.
Exactly. Alpha 3 even.
Yeah.
Siphon Filter.
A lot of people say no, but I think because it's kind of an action, stealth action game, which are all the rage now. That was one of the pioneers, along with Metal Gear Solid, and I like Siphon Filter. I think that's sneak on there. Yeah, I agree with that.
Then you got Tekken 3, obviously, yes.
Yeah, definitely, yes.
Rainbow Six Vegas. No, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, the original one.
It's a bit clunky. It was clunky even then, I think.
It's clunky even then. You haven't got analog sticks.
I think it was made on the PC. It was a PC game, wasn't it? And they converted it to the PS1.
It's going to be... No one's going to pick it up and actually know how to control the little man. It'd be awful.
Yeah.
Twisted Metal, that'd be good fun.
Yeah.
Wild Arms. People say that's good.
But still think of more different games.
Yeah, so,
Gran Turismo.
I was about to ask you, what games would you put on there? Right, first one, Gran Turismo.
I'll replace the Puzzle Fighter Turbo with Street Fighter Alpha.
Street Fighter Alpha.
The best one, I think.
Crash Bandicoots.
Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, Parappa the Rapper.
And that's a Sony game.
Yeah, I know. They wouldn't have to fucking license anything. It was just there, isn't it?
Exactly. It's on there already. So
Bloody Raw. That was quite a good fight.
Bloody Raw, yeah. That would be better than Battle Arena to Shinden.
Soul Blade, if you have to have a weapons fighter, that's shit.
Soul Blade, yeah. Maybe even... I don't like them, but the WWE game's one of those. Yeah,
probably. They wouldn't be able to get a license now, but they'd have to reprogram it because they'd want to call it WWE something or other. But SmackDown.
Yeah, get one of the SmackDown games on there.
SmackDown if you're able to get the license. Probably, what else we got? Gran Turismo, probably, I think we've already
I'll tell you what they
that's an
should have had
obvious
on
one.
there. Tony Hawk's.
Tony Hawk's, oh god, yeah. Two, put Tony Hawk's 2
Tony
on there.
Hawk's 2 on there.
And you got the perfect one. Ape Escape.
Ape Escape, a good party game, yeah.
Tomb Raider.
Okay.
It's clunky and everyone hates
that was an iconic PlayStation game.
But yeah, it's like the PlayStation game. That. And probably a lot of people say Castlevania Sympathy of the. Oh god, I can't pronounce it. Symphony of the Night.
Symphony of the Night. Sympathetic Night.
Yeah, everyone's like, oh yeah, that should definitely go on there, but no one bought that in Europe. I'm a Castlevania fan. I could be. You YouTubers would have you think that everyone played that game. No one played it apart from fanboys.
Exactly.
So
if you say you went out and bought that on day one,
talking crap.
I saw the review for Castlevania, and I
don't even remember it ever coming out when I had to play. I was looking for it, and I don't remember adverts for it. I don't remember seeing it in a shop. But
I think someone shared a screen grab of Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Came out the same time as Castlevania 3D on the N64, whatever that's called.
Coming out, it's just Castlevania.
And then they had like a little comment saying, "Oh, PlayStation really dropped the ball with Castlevania Symphony of the Night. It's gone back in time with these old 2D graphics. It looks absolutely awful. I'm going to buy the N64 version because it's all 3D and going with the future or something."
Even though it was definitely worse than Symphony of the Night, it was way worse.
It was definitely history as
a funny way of because they always say, but a lot of people, you know what? I got into a weird kind of an argument with someone on Facebook about N64.
Oh, I love these.
So I was on an N64 group, and someone said, I find it really weird when people say N64 games haven't aged well. What are you talking about? They've aged perfectly. They look brilliant. They play really well. The gameplay's the same. I was like, well, I can see why. And it was like, what are you talking about? Well, take GoldenEye. If you gave if you gave that to a 15-year-old, and you handed them the controller, and you handed them GoldenEye, they would find it super clunky and annoying. To be able to aim down the barrel, you've got to hold a button down and basically stop walking, and move a crosshair around.
The crosshair always sort of flicks back to the middle of the screen. And...
The frame rate is all over the place. It's the mission structure probably be a bit weird. That's not too bad, but they'll just also the N64's video output is just crap. So that would be annoying to them as well. And he's like, no, that's rubbish. That's like, they'll be able to pick it up and then just with a bit of practice, they would love it. They would absolutely love it. The gameplay's still there. Like, well, for us it is because we've got the muscle memory and, we grew up on that. But a kid would hate it. Whereas like maybe even weirdly enough, an older game, like, if you handed them the original Super Mario Kart, they'd get right into it within mid-seconds. Or Mario World, no issues with clunkiness or anything at all.
I think quite a few games kids might be able to. GoldenEye is a good example of a game that's really not aged well at all, and any kind of a
3D platform where you have to move the camera around or an FPS. No one.
They wouldn't have. I would say Mario 64. That's a good game that someone.
Even that would still have its camera issues. If you used to play Ratchet and Clank full time, and even the later Spyros, and you'd be like, you basically the C buttons are basically the second analog stick. It'd be less clunky. You're right. It is less clunky. I would argue that Banjo-Kazooie would be easier for someone to play.
Mario Kart 64. To me, you can always pick that one up, and
any kind of a 2D game where it's not dependent on a camera or anything.
or just a racing game or something like that. If anything, they haven't aged that badly. But I would even say that if you're a young gamer, maybe 11, 12, and you were given Mario World on the SNES, that would be more intuitive on what to do than something like GoldenEye, which came out 5, 6, 7 years later.
The graphics aren't ugly. They look cool, cartoony, colourful. the things look like the things they're trying to be, or just in a cartoony way. They animated. They look like a cartoon, really cool. Whereas like a big chunky, weird looking like blocky man with hand sort of kind of puppet like movements. It just hasn't aged well. Doesn't mean the other game's crap, but it's just that's what they mean by it hadn't aged well. And he chucked an analogy at me. Well, that's like saying because like if someone started playing football and because football's old, they wouldn't like it then. And I was like, well, no, it'll be the analogy if you're going to use like football would be there's a new there's a certain way to train how to play football, and that's gotten better over the years. So now we've got the current version of how to learn how to play football. But the person that wants you to learn football is making you learn how to play it from 30 years ago when things weren't as refined. You would say, I don't want to do it that way because that hasn't aged well because now we have this better stuff that refined it. But he just wasn't having it. He's probably our age, so he grew up with this stuff. So naturally, he's got a bit of a rose-tinted thing going on. But I can see how, but mainly, I mean, it only really applies to like a racing game. It's just cars. Blocky cars look fine still.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe sports games where you're not looking directly at the same blocky character. No. I don't think they're quite as bad in terms of how they've aged. Maybe football games because the frame rate would be so low.
Did I tell you I had quite a good gaming experience this week? I went up to Birmingham for a training session. Yeah, well, Red Dead Redemption. I went up for a training session, and me and a guy from work, Tim, he's actually an American guy, and so I brought my Switch along, and I thought, Tim, we'll play a bit of Tecmo Bowl on the way back on the train. So we're sitting there on the train, and I think he felt like he knew how to play like all of these NES games because in America NES games were everywhere, and it was so funny how he's completely owning me at Tecmo Bowl.
God,
and he just knew all the buttons, what to do, and he was just absolutely owning me at it. I think he beat me by 40 points to 0.
It's a very good game, It's like the soccer of NFL sort of games, is how I would describe it to someone who didn't play that. But he would be like horrified by like sort of the 80s and early 90s in our video game history because there'd be very little Nintendo. So it'd be like, what is this Amiga thing you keep talking about?
Things like Sensible Soccer and
we played Sensible Soccer and Shadow of the Beast, and they'd be like, what the hell's that? Where's Mario?
Exactly. And I mean, I had consoles back then, but not to the same extent that people have them now.
It'd be a bit of a weird alternate reality to it's only really there that they had that though. We had the NES here, but we talked about it before, didn't we? But it just wasn't as... The home computers were cheaper and the games are cheaper, basically.
Exactly. I was telling him that when Mario 3 came out, I think this is right, it was $59.99. So that's if you put that in, if you put that into the what's it called? Inflation calculator, that will probably be over £100. And how on earth my parents could have gone £100, or we can buy you a cassette for $2.99, or an Amiga game for maybe $7.99, or you can borrow your friend who's got a pile the size of a house full of copied games. It was just
okay, you pay more for the system, and it was like you're pushing £300 for an Amiga 500. It might have been a bit more than that when it came out. But when you say at 1990, I think they're about £300 and a little bit less for an Atari ST. But the games were often, we got ports of a lot of NES games that were the same, like Ninja Turtles and stuff like that, except they were literally half the price. And often they would look better. I mean, the Americans didn't really get any kind of a 16-bit thing until the Mega Drive came out. Well, maybe the PC, the Turbo Graphics, but we already had 16-bit games became mainstream, in the late 80s for us. Where they kind of existed alongside 8-bit games. There wasn't really a point where we just dumped all the 8-bit computers and then just all migrated en masse to the Atari ST and the Amiga.
It's funny how the Commodore 64 was such a popular machine in the US, but the Amiga was just, I don't know, no one seemed to...
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's funny, like, when I watch the Game Chasers, you occasionally get Billy talking about the Atari ST because he had one, strangely enough, and he collects for it. And he does a little tour of his game room, and he's really proud of this little corner he's dedicated to the Atari ST. He's got like 3 boxed games that he managed to pick up. And it's actually it's the original 520 ST, which was all in separate bits. You had to get the actual main unit, and then that doesn't have a disk drive built into it, so you have to get a separate disk drive. You can't plug it into a TV. You have to use an actual Atari like monitor. It was the 520 STF and the STFM that you can actually plug into a telly, which is kind of a strange thing when you think about it. But yeah, but to him and to his mates, that was a weird, quirky, like niche system, you know. Whereas here it was just a standard, you know, computer. So yeah, what you could pick Atari ST games up for, like, you know, £2 or £3 still here.
Yeah, pennies.
Yeah, boxed ones. I've got, you know, about a dozen myself that are all boxed and complete and in good nick. Discs still work and everything. Same with the Amiga. But yeah, and these were both systems that were developed in the US. But it's because we already...
Well, exactly. I was going to say that they're both American systems.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and then how Commodore could not take their success they had with the Commodore 64 and go, hey guys, right, we got the next machine, the Commodore Amiga, and turn that into the biggest, you know, computer in the US. I do not know. Yeah,
it's weird, isn't it? Because it is a bit different as well, the Commodore 64 in the US, because they didn't really have any tape games. They moved on from magnetic sort of tape media from the Apple II.
Saying that, I was watching a Metal Jesus Rocks, and he had maybe one of his pickups or something, one of his videos, and he goes, "Oh, you know, this guy Johnny from, you know, Leicester in the UK has sent me a tape game for the Commodore 64," and then Radical Reggie. Wow, a game on the tape. Wow, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And he's like, I've never seen that. How'd they do that, dude?
That's absolutely crazy. Yeah, I think it's because their Commodore 64s, it was the floppy drive was the default for them.
Exactly. When over here, I don't know, maybe we're all poor, and
it was really expensive. It was cost more than the actual Commodore 64 floppy drive. And if you look at the magazines at the time, often you'd be able to get the tape version of a game from just walking into a shop, but you'd have to mail order the floppy disk version. It would be about £5 more than it, and you get it on a 5 1/4 inch. The big sort of literally were floppy disks. There was really the Amiga and the Atari ST that got us all into disks, because that was the default storage medium. And I think the disk drives were a lot cheaper then. Well, I guess not necessarily cheaper, but they could subsidize the cost of the drive because it was part of the actual whole unit sort of thing. So you didn't have to go and pay £200 for an external disk drive. But that's just ridiculous to have to pay that for something. So when you could just get games, you could just get a cassette drive. And I mean, to be honest, you couldn't really have... It was difficult to have productivity software on a cassette because of the way, you know, it has to load things. You can only really do that on a disc. So I don't think we really got much of that stuff on cassette. I think you did get like word processors, didn't you? Did you get them on like cassettes? I remember them maybe being on sort of Commodore format front cover.
No, there could have been
something. Yeah, but that stuff was really exclusively for discs. But I don't think really that many people used their Commodore 64 for that kind of thing. Programming, I think, was probably more common than just general, I'm going to type a letter out stuff, right? I think it was more sort of the Amiga and the ST where people would just use them as all-round, like they really would use them as all-round computers, general purpose computers, because they were really good. It was easy to, you know, that's why we had tons of printers and stuff would come out and all that. And the Amiga was great for like, you know, the Deluxe Paint, and the ST was really good for like, you know, publishing, wasn't it? Desktop publishing. So they both found their little niches in those sort of things. But yeah, to them, they're really niche computers, because by like when the NES came out, it just killed all that really. And the only real well, it was the PC was the only computer as such that kind of kept going. I mean, you think the Commodore 64 here didn't really die until about 93. I think there was still a handful of commercial games came out in 1993. And I don't think they stopped making them until the Commodore went bust. So it lived actually as long as the Amiga did. Pretty well. It was out 3 or 4 years before the Amiga. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because you had the Commodore 64 come out in 1982. It was only 3 years later that the Amiga came out. So there wasn't a big gap of many years where, you know, all we had was 8-bit stuff. That I think it's because the Amiga was extremely expensive for about 2 or 3 years.
It was, yeah.
People don't really talk about Amiga history until sort of like
it was something like £599, wasn't it? It was...
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think it was about £1,000. The Amiga 1000.
Oh yeah, but the 1000, I think that was where, I'm not saying they were making a mistake with that machine, but it was, you know, it was a productivity.
Yeah, it was marketing.
Machine. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then they thought, hold on, you know, let's go down a different route. Well, they did in the UK and Europe, but maybe not in America.
They always seem to be a bit embarrassed, didn't they, to actually just flat out say, yeah, you can play games on this. That was the last thing they always wanted they wanted to sort of come across as serious business computers. But everyone saw they could run games really well. Because what else are you going to do with sound, awesome sound and lots of colours? You know, you can only draw so many pictures in Deluxe Paint. You know.
Yeah, so, they never really came with hard drives, did they? So
no,
it was. I thought it was very difficult to actually use it as a proper productivity computer. And I remember I had
processing, I think, and maybe
Wordsworth
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And to get that going, you had to put in about 4 different discs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Deluxe Paint, you know, was quite cool, but you could. You know, you could save things to your floppy disks and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I didn't have a printer. Printers were quite expensive in the 90s. So it cost nearly as much as an Amiga for a half decent one. There was anything like a quality that you would want to print a letter out on to send to someone. Because the cheaper end of the scale in those days was like a big, huge dot matrix, you know, with the awful paper with the punch holes in the sides of it. Those you could get for cheap, but anything that you wanted to make like a real thing.
Did you get a 9-pin or a 24-pin printer?
Oh yeah, there was that, wasn't there? I just remember there was the adverts in like Amiga format for that. We talked about these guys before as well. Silica Systems.
Yeah.
Who had a shop on Tottenham Court Road. They always put these really great adverts in like Amiga format, and pretty much all the computer magazines actually. And they'd always have this amazing selection of printers. And they'd be like, yeah, make sure you get the right, you know, pin connector or whatever it was. And you couldn't it wasn't just plugging it into an Amiga, was it? I think you had to put a driver in it and stuff and all that. And certain software would only work with certain printers as well, wasn't it? You couldn't just get one.
I never really had a printer for the Amiga. It was... No. I
never did either.
I didn't get a printer, I think, until I got a PC.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, like I said, they were very expensive. You're looking at least a couple £100 for an okay one, not even like a cheap one. And you've already paid 300 for the Amiga, and it took them ages to bring the price down on the Amigas as well. I mean, I used to look at like the Amiga 500, and they were still charging like £200 for one, and I was like, and there's the Mega Drive, which is a shade more powerful for half the price. You could argue that, you could do your homework on it and all that stuff, but like you were saying, you can only really do that stuff if you have printers and all that stuff, and you add that on top of it, you're pushing £500.
But I thought, well, to me, the Amiga was always such better value because on the Mega Drive, it was great because there was lots of great platformers, a lot of great games from Japan, but for the Amiga, you had loads of great big, I'd say, games that for some reason I just don't play them anymore. But things like I harped on about it, but Settlers, but like Megalomania, and there are games that are just like wow, they were just so good and so sort of engrossing. You could just play those for hours and slowly take over the world. Or you had that different type of game, the football managing games.
Yeah, yeah.
You never really got those on the Mega Drive. You got Premier Manager, but you never got Championship Manager. You never got, what's the other
Formula One Grand Prix and like
Yeah,
no flight simulators. Yeah,
yeah, you could do so much more with it, and I was like, oh well, if I get a Mega Drive, which I got one eventually. You can't. There's so many different types of games you just can't play. They're just not on there. You haven't got a mouse. You haven't got a keyboard, and then things like Monkey Island,
yeah, yeah.
Big Adventures. I used me and my friends used to sit around all day going, oh no, try this. No, try that. No, try that. Try that. Oh, it's worked. Oh my God. We're on to the next bit. And
It was easier to port a game to the Amiga actually than it was the other way. Like I was playing Mortal Kombat 2 on my Amiga 1200, and that actually has quite a few extra things in it over the Mega Drive version, which I think it was probably ported from because they're quite similar architectures. For starters, it's got loads more voices. The Mega Drive one doesn't really have any. If you win a round, it doesn't say Scorpion wins, it just says nothing, which is really disappointing. It's actually kind of a crap port, actually, the Mega Drive version of Mortal Kombat 2. They could have done a lot better.
Sorry, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you only got to look at Mortal Kombat 3 on the Mega Drive, which is really good. And it's actually just tons of voices, loads of backgrounds, and is actually closer to the arcade than the previous two games, even though Mortal Kombat 3 would have been more difficult to port. I think it's because it's go on, sorry.
I want to say Regeneration Gaming.
Yeah, yeah.
He did a video probably about, I don't know, a week ago or something of cannon fodder on the Super Nintendo. And I thought, oh, I'll have a look at that. And
I saw that, yeah.
What stood out was, one, how on earth it would be quite difficult to play cannon fodder with the joypad for starters. Actually,
it's not too bad. I play it a little bit on the SNES. It's not too bad.
But then the actual song, War Never Been So Much Fun. They had that.
Yeah.
Had it the instrumental version.
Yeah.
And actually, yeah,
it kills it straight away, doesn't it? It kills it.
Yeah, and they kind of put another instrument in, sort of, kind of doing I can't describe it, but the music.
It's missing a lot of stuff. I mean, even the birds that fly overhead, they don't make any squawking noises really. Neither the Soul Soldiers don't cry out when you've shot them, which is a bit gruesome, but that isn't in there. And even though it's got more colours, so it could really like blow away the Amiga version if they really were completely, had a free reign. It looks a lot worse. It's still good. You could play it. It looks fine, but the Amiga version is a lot better. The Mega Drive version is a little bit better as well, actually, because
it's got the same processor, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, and the SNES has some good Amiga ports. Chaos Engine's pretty good. So is Pinball Dreams is really good. Even the music is really close to the Amiga version on that because they had quite similar ways of producing sound, the SNES and the Amiga. Shadow of the Beast is really good on the SNES, but also the other way around. Like the Amiga's got a really, really good version of Desert Strike that is actually better than the Mega Drive version. You lose a little bit of resolution. Because Amiga games tended to have a big black border around the bottom, or a big black chunk of the screen at the bottom of the screen because they ran in sort of 320 by 200, whereas the Mega Drive was sort of like 320 by 240. So those extra sort of 40 lines kind of, ended up going to the bottom of the screen. But the sound is way better. Like the little fellas that you pick up and rescue that are dotted around the map, they sort of say, over here, help, and stuff like that, which they don't on the other versions. And just the explosions are really good, and The only thing is, it's a bit annoying with the one-button joystick because you have to use the keyboard to switch weapons and go on the map, which is a little bit annoying. But yeah, you can use a two-button pad as well that allows you to switch weapons, I think. I think if you hold down the button, that brings open the map, so that can pretty much eliminates it if you've got like a Mega Drive pad. But yeah, and there's also like a Super Street Fighter 2 on the Amiga 500 is really good. Probably isn't as good as the Mega Drive, but it's actually quite good compared to the first Street Fighter 2, which was utter toilet. It's actually quite good.
Yeah, I got what was it? Street Fighter 2 on the Amiga, and I loved it. And I think it's an awful version, but
yeah, I liked it at the time.
I had Street Fighter 2 on and I just loved playing it, and it was just absolutely great. That's the first game I got for my Amiga. I was just so happy with it.
Yeah.
It's just really, really good. But now it's actually it's quite a bad version of it. There's problems with it and all of that. But you didn't notice these things when you were younger.
Final Fight is quite good on the Amiga. You've got all three characters are selectable. There's no music, weirdly, but it looks good. It uses the same sprites as the arcade machine. So in that sense, it's actually a little bit more faithful than the Super Nintendo. But it's not as good as the Mega CD version, which also isn't actually that really, really close to the arcade. But yeah, that's actually not a bad version. Even the ST version, that isn't too bad. So yeah, there's Road Rash came out as well for the Amiga. That was ported over from the Mega Drive.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
that's really good. I mean, one bad example is actually weirdly FIFA International Soccer, the first FIFA, kind of crap on the Amiga. I really don't understand why it is, but it just is. It's very jerky, which kind of kills it. And you can't understand how using one button is a bit of a nightmare with it as well. Lion King, some of the Disney games like Aladdin, they ported over really well to the Amiga. I think a lot of the times because the custom chips that it has in it, like the Blitter and the Paula chip and the Agnes and all those different chips, I think that kind of kept it competitive. Because a lot of the graphics would be handled by those guys, and the CPU kind of just sat there, and was only we didn't have to take on all the load of all the graphics and everything. But like the Bitmap Brothers games, like Gods and things like that, always look really good. Speedball is really good. Although the Mega Drive version of that is really good, but actually it's still not as good as the Amiga because it's missing a lot of sound effects that the Amiga has, and the music isn't as good. Sensible Soccer. There was no Sensible World of Soccer on the Mega Drive or the SNES.
No.
If you want to play the definitive game, then you've got to play it on the Amiga. Even the PC version is slightly off in terms of how it runs compared to the Amiga version. So yeah, it was interesting in those days when we had all these different ports. But yeah, interesting times. Not too different these days, really, with things being ported across and us comparing the different versions as we were at the beginning with Red Dead. It's never really stopped. But wow, I think we've done
an hour.
I think we've done a bloody hour, haven't we?
I can smell my dinner cooking.
Your dinner's cooking. Smell what Stuart's cooking.
Yes.
What's on the menu?
It's quite funny. I'm not going to say what our topic was meant to be tonight.
That was our topic. What are you talking about?
That was our topic. Where it wasn't our topic. We sort of went on to that topic.
Really
the topic we were going to do, we're going to have to do another time.
We will, I'm sure. If you don't start babbling on beforehand. Anyway, where can you find us, Stu? You know all this stuff normally.
We're everywhere. We're on Facebook, Console Shock. You can find us on YouTube.
Yeah.
Console Shock. You can find us on Twitter now. Console Shock. You find our website consoleshock.net and you also can download the podcast on Stitcher and on iTunes.
The iTunes.
Yep. So you've got the podcast apps on your Android phone or your iPhone. You can find some there as well.
Awesome. Right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody, and we shall see you in the next one. Take care and bye.
See ya.